Hello people and welcome to episode 9. In this episode I chat with Zoe, the director of Beautiful Healthy Home. We talk about the chemicals that are in our day-to-day products that we should be conscious of and tips on how to make changes in our home to try to live a more healthy life. Enjoy.
Says connected.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hey Zoe, how you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you doing?
To make sure, it's so weird because it's asked me to test my microphone and test my headphones. And I've chosen my microphone and my headphones rather than the computer.
Yeah.
But when I pick it, it never works. But when I pick the computer, it connects fine. But when I check, it's connected my microphone and my headphones. So technology.
Yeah, I know. No, it makes sense to me.
It's going so fast, even we can't keep up.
Tell me about it. It's like things like Nintendo Switch drive me insane. All the language, and then even my kids are like, "Oh, that's a bit confusing."
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, it's funny you mentioned Nintendo because I haven't bought a console for my daughters yet. I don't know if I will, but I'm sure there'll be a time they might be like, "Dad, can we
Everyone
get
else has got one, yeah.
Can we get it for Christmas? Can we get it for a birthday or something like that?" Yeah, and exactly that. Everyone else has got one, so why can't we have one?
Yeah.
So our friend, she's clearing out some stuff and she's given her Nintendo Wii, and I was like, okay. I mean, that's something that we all can play with. Like, I think you can do like Wii Sports and stuff like that. So if it's a way of getting them active, so I guess I can give them a pass, can't I?
Yeah, well, that's how I started. We started the Wii, and then we went to those little handheld, what they called I can't remember.
Nintendo. I know what you're talking about. It was a folding one, I remember.
Folding one, yeah. So they had them for quite a while, and then finally we kind of like, well, my their dad was like, right, they're gonna get Switches for Christmas.
Brilliant. So obviously this is the second time we've recorded. A lot has changed since then, I'm sure.
A lot has changed since then, yeah.
With your business and courses, and even for myself, like I've done more courses as well. But enough about me. This is all about you.
Well, I want to find out about your courses afterwards. You need to tell me.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I'll talk to you about that. But if you just let the listeners know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Zoe and I own a business called Beautiful Healthy Home. So it started out as a small independent retail store online, and I was selling at market, selling products that I felt were healthier for the home, because my focus is helping people create healthier interiors, like healthier indoor spaces. It's kind of a long story, but I was going to start that with I was going to start my interior design studio in lockdown. And lockdown happened, and I just couldn't start it because I had never done a Zoom before. I didn't have a network, so I started the retail side first, which was brilliant, and it allowed me to kind of gain a network and understand what people wanted as well from an interior design perspective. So finally, this year, roll on 2 years, I have launched my interior design service. Beautiful Healthy Home is an interior design studio, but with a difference, because I put health at the heart of design. I do find there's just so many products out there that they contain chemicals. Really useful, but some of them are toxic, and that's really what I want to bring awareness to, is the toxic chemicals in our home and how we can avoid them.
Wow, amazing. And what does toxic mean? Because I used to say, oh, that's poisonous, and then when people hear that, I was like, they'll just be like, hold on a sec, I've just put it on my skin and I'm not dead. So when you talk about toxic products and stuff like that, so what does that mean for a consumer?
Well, there's chemicals in so many things that we use, whether it's in our skin, whether what we eat or what we interact with on a daily basis, our clothing, our furniture. And first I want to say not all chemicals are bad. A lot of chemicals have brought us amazing technology, advanced consumer products and so on. But we're discovering over time that there are chemicals that are toxic. And by that we mean they are leading to health defects and health issues later in life. We're also building what's called a toxic body burden. So all of us have chemicals in our body from birth. Infants have them, babies have them, and fetus have them from their mother. And this has kind of been going on for the last 80 to 100 years since synthetic chemicals were introduced into the environment. And so when we talk about toxicity, yes, the levels might be incredibly low in a product, and therefore you're not going to just drop dead when you walk into your shower and touch your shower curtain or apply your skin cream. But the issue is what's happening when you apply the same cream the same brand day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year, you're building up your exposure to that particular chemical in that particular product. And that hasn't been assessed. And this is what a lot of professionals around the world and different disciplines are coming to realize, that really we're exposing ourselves to a whole plethora of chemicals daily. It's having adverse effects to our health, because we're seeing things like increase in cancer, increase in heart disease, increase in obesity, and there are specific chemicals that are linked to those.
Autoimmunity, like people are just getting sicker and sicker compared to 100 years ago.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be really getting ill at all, because our bodies weren't designed for that. But so I guess what I don't want to do is kind of create fear or make anyone fearful about it. We are surrounded by these, and as I said, some of them are not toxic, and it's fine for us to live with them. But we just have to be far more mindful, because a lot of products that are put on the market are not regulated. We might think they are because they're for sale. We might think they're safe, but they're not. So it's about being more mindful and just bringing awareness as well to the kind of things that you do on a daily basis, and what you could change.
Interesting, because you mentioned about most of the things are not regulated, and we think they are because they're safe to sell. So why isn't it regulated then? Why is that the case?
So, well, if we jump back to a potted history on chemicals. Synthetic chemicals were used for warfare. And then after World War II, they realized they needed to increase food production. Chemicals were used for early plastics like Bakelite, and obviously the medical industry and electronics industry have boomed with the use of synthetic chemicals. So we've seen these chemicals. We had about 200 chemicals in commercial use in the 60s. And there was a book written by a woman called Rachel Carson called Silent Spring, and she could already see the effect of those 200 chemicals would have in the future on wildlife, on aquatic species, and on human health. And this was in 1962 it was published. It's quite an iconic book, Silent Spring.
Wow, I am getting that book. I am getting that book.
It's fascinating. But that was 200 chemicals in the commercial environment. We now have, drum roll, 80,000.
Wow.
Okay, so we now have 80,000 chemicals. 6,500 of them are used in commercial use regularly. And you and I and the listener are exposed to over 200 daily. Now, like I said, not all of them are toxic, not all of them are bad, but some of them are. And it's really, from my business perspective, I want to be able to help people pinpoint what those are in their homes, so they can, whether it's the flooring, because we have toxic chemicals in flooring, whether it's the wallpaper, the paint that you choose, clothing.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. What am I going to do? Zoe, what am I going to do? Everywhere, I might as well just walk around naked.
Well, don't do that. You start small. You just start small. I started, when I first realized this, I was breastfeeding my first child. There was a candle on the sideboard. It was burning, and there was a bit of black smoke coming off it. And I must admit, I'd never thought about my own lung health. I just thought about his, and I thought, what is that doing to my indoor atmosphere? So I looked it up, discovered there's all sorts of chemicals in paraffin wax candles, because they come from the bottom of the crude oil barrel. So chemicals like xylene, toluene, benzene, carcinogenic. They irritate the respiratory system. So that was it for me. Paraffin candles were out. And then I looked at other products that were adding kind of fragrance to my home. And I was like, hold on, these plugins, I've always thought they smell a bit funny, but I've kind of used them, or I use the things for the toilet, or, lots of chemicals to clean the place. So it was just a journey. So my advice is just take it one step at a time, choose one product. You might find that like an air freshener kind of maybe gives you a slightly irritant throat.
And that's a sign that your body's telling you, hold on a sec, it shouldn't be there. I have so many friends and family and clients that say, oh, when I use this hairspray, I start sneezing. I was like, because it's trying to get it out.
Your body's going, no, I don't want this.
Exactly. And then you keep taking it in, and eventually you stop sneezing, but it's already deep within the system, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing. So there's different ways that we can absorb these chemicals. Inhalation is one of the biggest ones, because we're breathing in our air constantly. And if you're spraying it with, spray deodorant or masking smells, those tiny, tiny particles will go into your lungs, affect the respiratory system, affect the neurological system, whatever. There's all different kinds of chemicals that affect different parts of the body. So yeah, I just tend to not use sprays. That's another kind of hard and fast rule that I developed. But it's taken me years, You know, I was quite a commercially minded human because I worked and breathed fashion retail. I was a fashion buyer, you know, a good 20 years ago. So for me to change my commercial habits has been really hard, but it's a journey. It's a journey.
Yeah. What is your background then before you started this?
So I studied in Glasgow. I studied fashion and business studies. I then went south, excuse me, to London and worked my way up the buying ladder in fashion buyer and accessories. But I just felt it was too cutthroat. And also at that point, there was not enough for me corporate social responsibility for the companies I was working with. And this was just at the turn of when companies like Marks and Spencer's were starting to look at sustainability in fish or, you know, food products, and it hadn't really hit fashion yet.
So, sorry, what is a corporate social responsibility? What does that exactly mean?
So when a company looks at their supply chain and makes sure that all parts of the supply chain are actually ethical and that they're not detrimental, they don't have bonded labor, child labor, that they have a living wage. Excuse me, because a lot of these, particularly in the fashion industry, it's such a convoluted supply chain. There's lots of third parties that farm out, you know, maybe the embroidery or the sewing of the sequins, and it's very hard to make sure that those people are being paid fairly and that their working conditions are right and there's no children involved. So yeah.
Yeah, because one thing springs to mind is when like you buy a bar of chocolate and it always says it's like there's a Cocoa Alliance or something where
Yeah.
it's like a fair trade or something like that. So it's talking the kids or people who are picking up the cacao beans are being paid fairly, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, funnily enough, that's the good link. I then sidestepped from, I left buying and I went into fair trade. So I worked for the Fair Trade Foundation for about 7 years,
Wow.
which is fascinating because it really helped me understand. I'd been at the one end of the supply chain, and now I was kind of helping to work with those at the very thin edge of the wedge, which was basically the farmers and producers and workers that were
Wow.
actually, you know, actually growing the cotton, growing the cocoa and the sugar and so on. So it was a fascinating journey for me to understand that in more depth. So yeah, the fair trade mark is so important. If you see it on products, try and buy products with that mark. But there's other ones, like there's Rainforest Alliance, like you said, the Cocoa Alliance, and they're all striving to give people who are disenfranchised more power and a better community, education, and yeah, living wage.
And when you worked at the fair trade, what did you learn in did you say 7 years you were there for?
Yeah, so I started in I kind of just did a completely different thing to my previous career. I
Yeah.
started in the fair trade mark department, which was applying the mark on packaging. So it was really kind of design led and working with companies to put the mark in the right position. And then I got involved with the international licensees because it's fair trade all over the world. And then we started to develop guidelines for use of the mark on packaging and promotional materials, and I helped develop them. So that was one of my main projects to help develop across the whole, the international licensees. That was a really exciting project. There were lots of things going on in the background. There was like fair trade cotton was introduced, fair trade gold. It was a really exciting time, and we grew from 24 people when I joined, and I left, there was 110. So
Wow.
it was an incredible change as well and dynamic to the organization.
Wow. You talked about chemicals earlier, right?
Yeah.
So, as you said, many people think that it's tested, but actually not. And I think also what I would like to add is some chemicals might be tested singularly, but they don't get tested together when you put them all together into a product, isn't it?
That's the problem. And also, no, there's not really been any studies because it's very difficult to get humans to kind of volunteer for like
Who would do it? Who would do it?
Who would do it exactly? But we are kind of all these guinea pigs because it's never been done before. So we're all sitting in our breathing in the volatile organic compounds that are coming from the chemicals that are off gassing, or we're absorbing them through our clothes if we've just had them dry cleaned, you know, or we're sleeping in mattresses, flame retardant. So yeah, so they're not necessarily regulated the way that we presume they would be. And also a big issue is that a lot of chemicals are grandfathered, which is like an American term, which is the EPA, it's the Environmental Protection Agency, is the agency that really controls the use of toxic substances and sets regulations. But over the years, why we've got to 80,000 chemicals is because so many of them have been grandfathered on the back of chemicals that were already in use. And because those chemicals that were in use were not actually showing to be a problem, you know, a direct problem, like people weren't touching them and dying that day. Therefore, they were grandfathered into the market. Therefore, they were just let into the market straight away. But
Wow.
we're now seeing 20, 30, 40 years, there's an issue. So for example, like if you take cancer, it's now every 1 in 2 people will get cancer. I
That's
mean,
correct.
that's an absolutely crazy statistic. I remember looking at this about 5 years ago, it was 1 in 3. You know, what's happened in the last 5 years? When my grandmother was alive, it was 1 in 22 women would have breast cancer. It's now 1 in 8. So genetically, as a human race, we have never seen a genetic change in such a short space of time. So we have to look at the macro environment and what's happening in our environment. And it's chemicals, synthetic chemicals is the biggest thing that's changed in our lives.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, and it's the same thing that I say to all of my clients and people who ask me about, oh, why is it such a big thing? It's definitely a big thing. I don't know if you heard of a doctor called Dr. Jenny Goodman.
No.
She basically said exactly what you said, and she's an environmental ecological doctor. And everything basically what you're talking about is what she does in her practice. But I've got some good news. She's agreed to come on my podcast. She's really good, and I'm chuffed that she's agreed to come on. So I can't wait to have her on. So what made the penny drop? What made you so passionate about this business?
Well, when I moved out, I felt like I had this blank canvas, and I've always been kind of in touch with, you know, more natural fabrics and vintage and antique products. But there's always also been a draw to high street, you know, seasonal collections, you know, because like the likes of H&M and Next and M&S all do these little homeware collections. And having been a fashion buyer, I was drawn to the homeware buyer. But eventually I started thinking, like, I hate the idea of over commercialization of homeware products, because there must be homeware mountains, like we've got clothing mountains. You know, these large companies are producing seasonal product that people don't really need to change. We don't need to change our interiors every 6 months, you know. So my interior design service is all about finding out what you want and what's your personality, and looking at more natural products and just being more holistic. So my journey really just started when I moved house, and I thought, right, okay, this is a time I can start exploring. I mean, it's taken years of research, and I've just finished various kind of diplomas and modules as well. So it's can't remember. What was your question?
And what made you passionate about what you want to do? And and you mentioned about when you were breastfeeding your child, and the smell from the candle you make you wonder. It's, I think, in this space of health, it's curiosity that starts everything.
Yeah, definitely. And it was the health of my children. I wanted to make sure I gave a really good, healthy home for them and for myself. And so, yeah, the move of the house move was just a kind of really lovely opportunity to kind of start thinking about paints and flooring. And obviously not everyone can do that. I appreciate that, which is why I've started my service so that I can go in and help people. But, you know, we also look at extensions and loft conversions and things like that. So, because there's different building materials that you can think about using as well, like healthier insulation and so on.
I was going to say, what was the turning point where you just realized, okay, I'm going to start this business? Because to start, like, to be interested in the subject is one thing, and then to try to make it into living, like you and me are doing, is another step. Because like, it is a big step to think like, okay, now I'm going to be like, I'm going to stand up and speak and talk about this openly. Like for me to, if you asked me about 2-3 years ago to sit in front of a camera and record myself and, you know, post it to the whole world, I wouldn't be like, nah, I'm not doing it. But then,
absolutely,
then I got to a point. Well, let's just see. I'd just love to hear how your process was, and then we'll talk about mine.
Yeah, no, but it's really interesting, like you say that. Like 3 years ago, when someone mentioned Zoom, you know, I froze and was thinking, what? I have to have a meeting online? Like, how does that work? So yeah, I'm with you on that one. How did it start? So, well, basically when I was about 18 and when I was studying, I did a business degree, and what the final dissertation was how to set up your own business. And I set up a theoretical cafe. And I didn't have the finance in those days to kind of actually go with it, but I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur myself. So that burning desire had always been there. But I guess I shelved it whilst I did a career and I guess matured and learned a few things, or still maturing now. But so that burning desire to be an entrepreneur and go out on my own has always been there. And once I finally picked a lane, It's like, you know, the accessories and clothing and homeware, and I couldn't quite decide. And then the homeware and the chemicals and the environment, it just all fused together in the last 5 years. And I thought, right, this is it. This makes sense to me, and I'm passionate about it. So you have those moments when you're like, finally, you feel like you're on track. And there doesn't seem to be any other kind of interior design studio, certainly locally, that's doing this. So I felt like it was a really good opportunity for me to go out there and start talking about it.
Be your own boss, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's one big key thing that I've just noted down here. We talk about in fitness and nutrition, we talk about macronutrients, we talk about protein, carbohydrates, and fats, right? We
Right.
need those because
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
macronutrient. But the home is also a macronutrient as well because we're there most of the time. Well, okay, we work during the day, but in terms of recover, relaxing, when you want to be safe,
Mhm.
we're going to be at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 90% of the time that we spend like living is indoors, whether that's at home, at work, in school, you know, in different buildings. We're 90% indoors. We're an indoor generation, sadly. Um,
We never used to be,
no, we
right?
did, but that's because of technology, isn't it? And electronics and screens, and
Mm.
a lot more people do work from home now, which is a really good thing. It's
But to
obviously
be fair, and the weather as well, though, isn't it? Because like obviously we can't be outside all the time we're in the UK because it's cold and stuff
yeah,
like that. So
exactly. But you're absolutely right. That's why like having your home has to become more than just walls and a roof and a place to sleep and eat. It's where family discussions happen. It's where life, you know, your family grows, you grow. If you're on your own, you just, you know, you develop ideas, and it's got to be a sanctuary and a space that's health. And we haven't really put health at the forefront of design ever, really. It's been, you know, performance, durability, cost, and aesthetic, which are all still really important. But we have to now weave health in at the beginning, like when we design buildings and when we design cities and when we design the interiors and also the products that we put in them. So yeah, it's definitely the internal space is important to be holistic.
definitely, definitely. What did you find hard about your journey to till this point?
Um, I think I learned a lot with the retail side of things, because it's all very well being a buyer for a large corporation who give you a pot of money, and then you have what's called a merchandiser next to you. They're like the accountant, so they hold on to the purse strings. So running my own business, I didn't have that. So I made quite a few kind of financial errors in terms of spend and saving, and you know that can, because that wasn't my background. I've had to really train myself on budgets and profit and loss sheets and so on. So, and I'm still learning. Um, but that's something that's just a personal kind of milestone that I've got to work towards, you know. But it's something I'm determined to do because it's obviously part of running your own business.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so the challenges of running a small retail store, it's kind of in the background now anyway, because my ultimate goal was to launch my interior design service, and that's my main focus now. But the products are still there. They're just, I do the odd market. I'm actually doing an eco market on Saturday in Colchester. But I'm not doing them like every month or every week that I was doing last year.
It's exhausting doing a stall because I did a stall a couple of years ago before my flat got burnt down. But I'll talk to you about
Oh
that.
my word. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about that because it is quite relevant actually. So I started an acai bowl business. I don't know if you heard about them. An acai
Oh,
bowl. So acai bowl. So what it is acai is a superfood fruit that that you can only grow in South America,
okay.
and it got turned to a sorbet and it got sent to me. And what I did was my spin on it was so usually an acai bowl is you put the acai fruit sorbet as a base, and then you
Right.
top it up with granola, and then you top it up with fruit, and you sell it. And it tastes amazing. It does taste amazing. And then my cousins who went to Hawaii and they had it there. When they tried mine for when I had my launch here, they said it tastes exactly the same. And
Wow.
then my spin on it was because obviously I'm all about health and stuff.
Yeah.
So my spin on it was I made the granola myself because I noticed that the granola that you get from like the store is just full of crap.
Yeah.
So
Chemicals, yeah.
I just thought, why don't I just, that's the way I can make it different because I'm offering a healthier version of this acai bowl and people loved it. Like when it started, it was amazing. The reason why I mentioned that was putting everything out there, packing it all away. My God, it is tiring. And I never thought of it that way. I just thought, oh, it's gonna be, it's gonna be like, oh, just putting stuff out there, putting it back in the van, get back home. That's it. By the end of the day, I was
Yeah.
exhausted.
It is, it's physically challenging. And also sometimes I have the kids and I've got to cram them and the boxes and the gazebo into this tiny little car. And we spill out at the market and everyone laughs because they're like, how did you get everyone in there? So, yeah. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. And I must say I'm not really going to miss doing them regularly. I give my hat off to people that do. I know it's a lot of people do
Yeah,
that regularly, but I guess they get into a kind of routine.
routine.
I was doing a
Yeah.
bit more sporadically, which was probably a bit more exhausting. But yeah, I mean they're good fun though. I'm really looking forward to doing one on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the passion to do this kind of stuff, you
Yeah,
have to love to speak to people, and it
yeah,
seems like you and me are those kind of people where you have to. It's just part of the role of doing your own stall and part of the
it
role
is.
of
Yeah, and that's how I kind of came to realize that there is a market out there for healthier homes. Like people do want to know. A lot of people know stuff already. They know about natural cleaning products, or they know about how detrimental air fresheners can be. So it's just so nice to engage with local community and find out what other people are doing, and it felt like I was on the right path. So yeah, chatting to people at market is great. It's really good.
yeah, definitely. You learn a lot as well, like you said. You speak to other people, people who are like-minded, and people who ask questions that you might not know, but you go out and find out because you'd be like,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, that's interesting actually. I don't know, but do you know what? I'm going to find out for you now.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't know everything. There's so many things I still don't know about. So yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. And
Yeah.
it's nice to hear about other people in this kind of vein and what they're doing.
If someone asked you at your stall or this saw you for the first time, how do you define a healthier home?
Um, a healthy home, I think it all depends. It's your own perspective. It's like, what do you see as a healthy body? What do you see as, healthy food that you give to your children? It's very much your cultural upbringing, where you are in the world, what's available to you, like financially as well. So there's so many factors in that. There's not one overall like specifics. It really is down to your own personal preference. But for me, it's about, first of all, it's kind of clearing the indoor air of volatile organic compounds, which are basically so VOCs are chemicals that when they reach ambient temperature, they evaporate and enter our air, and we inhale them. So they come from, they come from products that I can't affect, like my computer at the moment is heating up. As the electronics heat up, the wiring, the plastic wiring will heat up, and there'll be chemicals in there that will be entering the air, just tiny, tiny, tiny ones. But so obviously I can't affect things like that, but things like I can affect like sprays, air fresheners, I've moved away from them. So that's what I'd suggest. And then when you start to buy products for your home, I'd go more natural, vintage or secondhand. Because if you're going for secondhand products, they've either already off-gassed, or they are vintage and never had chemicals in the first place because they're like natural woods.
Yeah.
So and obviously with the way the world is going, we need to be more sustainable and start reusing things. That's another thing I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
I'd love to get into that in a moment. Our last conversation, I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. I guess the easiest way to start, when people ask me is, just get more plants in your house.
yeah, plants are good. It would take a lot of plants
Oh, is it?
it would take a lot of plants to really filter your air, but plants are good. There's specific ones like ivy, sansevieria, the it's called mother-in-law's tongue, which I don't like that name, but it's like a snake plant that's really beautiful snake.
Yeah,
If you plants generally, like if you're looking at a healthier environment anyway, bringing nature indoors is really good for the soul and good for the well-being. So the more
definitely.
plants you can have, the better, really.
Yeah, definitely. How are we exposed to these toxic chemicals? I know you mentioned like I think you said creams earlier and sprays. Is there any other ways that we're, exposed to these in our bodies? Is there any other ways that are not so obvious?
Well, there's three main routes into the body, and that's inhalation, which I've excuse me, I've got a dry throat. Inhalation,
Yeah,
um, dermal absorption, so it's absorbed through the skin. Not all molecules are absorbed because obviously you've got skin cells and a barrier, but some are tiny, tiny, tiny molecules that will get through the skin barrier and into your bloodstream. So that's dermal absorption, inhalation, and digestion. So whatever we're putting into our mouth and drinking, we're going to take on board whatever's in that product. So that's why I'm a big advocate of organic as well. Organic wine, coffee, food. So they're the three routes. There are other routes. Like fetuses will get it through their mother, through the umbilical cord. Babies get it through the breast milk. But that's not to say, you know, breast milk was bad, breast milk was wonderful. But it's just a natural.
You would say then that means like eating organically is just as important when you're pregnant as well, because the chemicals have to go somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, some
I guess
some are.
So I guess the question is, do they get excreted out?
So you have a natural detoxification system in our body, the lymphatic system, our glands, our kidneys, our liver, and so on. So they all work obviously harmoniously. And there's certain chemicals they do just flush out. They're like, Matt, don't need you. There's other chemicals that are really, they kind of really confuse the body, and the body just doesn't know what to do with it. And so therefore, and they tend to be chemicals that are, I get this right, I think they're lipids. So they are attracted to fat cells.
Yeah, yes. So what tends to happen, it stores in the fat because...
Store them in the fat cells. So you're automatically storing, because you've got quite a lot of fat cells in your brain, you store these chemicals in your brain, you store them in your liver, you store them around the body. And I don't believe there's necessarily a way to get rid of them. You can stop your exposure to chemicals in the future, but once you've got them in your body, that's something I need to look into and see is if there's a way to actually detox those in our fat cells.
Yeah, I mean, what I recommend for people to try is go into a sauna, because if it's in your fat cells, if you just sit in a sauna, your fat is just crying out, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They are there. They're in our body. They're in our body.
And they can get into the babies as well. And I know there's been research where they've tested breast milk, and the toxins are in there, and you know the babies are consuming them as well. So
there's been studies to show that humans have over 200 chemicals in them, chemicals that are banned way back in the 70s and 80s, and then chemicals that are available now. So the thing is, all of us have a different level of exposure, because it depends where we work, what we do, what we live next to, so there's no hard and fast rule. This is the thing, and this is why it really has to be a personal, kind of personalized approach. And also, like I said earlier, what you yourself want to kind of tackle.
Yeah, definitely. So what kind of toxic chemicals are in typical day-to-day products then that people use?
Okay, so like I said, there's over 200. I'm not going to name all of them.
200 products?
200 chemicals.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
200 roughly. This is just like a finger in the kind of air.
But what I've noticed that over the years, like the creams that doctors used to give for kids, you're starting to see, oh, this is like
paraffin wax based,
paraffin free, or they said, oh, it's free of this, free of parabens, free of that. So it's interesting because initially we were getting it from the doctor surgery, from the pharmacist.
Yeah, because they were told they were safe, and now over time people have obviously developed serious health conditions, and then it's been evaluated and realized that it's those particular products. I mean, there's a institute in America called the Green Science Policy Institute, and they, like I said, there's thousands of chemicals, but they have identified 6 classes of chemicals as being the kind of main ones. There's others, but these are
interesting.
Go into their website, it's greensciencepolicy.org.
I'll put the link for everyone as well.
Yeah, and on there very clearly are the 6 classes that they deem to be the worst. Antimicrobials, solvents, not all solvents, but some solvents.
What does solvents mean exactly?
So solvents are chemicals that are a carrier. So for example, you add a solvent to a pigment or a resin in order to make paint or like a coating. And then you obviously apply that coating like polyurethane. And then as the solvent evaporates, which is that smell, you get that new in inverted commas smell. As it evaporates, those chemicals enter the air as volatile organic compounds. They don't disappear, they just become a different state. So they enter the atmosphere, you see, and then you breathe them in, and that then leads to problems. So that's what solvents are. They're like a carrier, they help make products. So we've got fire retardants, formaldehydes, certain metals like lead, cadmium. We've got asbestos, PFAs. Bi, A, and phthalates. So I mean, I won't go on, but there's like 6 key categories,
Yeah.
and you will find those key categories in products in the home. One example is, so let's look at BPA.
You
So
can get
we
them
can
in
talk about
receipts,
that.
can't you? You can get those in receipts, BPA.
You can, exactly. And people are touching, I think about the people that are working in like shops that are handing out receipts daily. They should really, really be wearing gloves or washing their hands after touching their till receipt.
Wow.
But they don't know, we don't know this. This is just new information that's just coming out. So BPA free products. So BPA is a chemical that's been added biphenyl has been added to plastics to make them rigid. And what we're also discovering more recently is that BPA free products aren't necessarily any better, because the substitutes are now being called regrettable substitutes. So the substitute that's been put in isn't actually any less toxic.
Wow.
So don't pick up rigid plastic products like baby bottles and food storage containers. Move to glass, move to aluminium, move to bamboo. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm here for. That's why I've spent all this time researching this and kind of figuring out what's better and healthier. And yeah, I hope I can be of service to people.
So I just want to quickly go through the ones that you just mentioned. So you said solvents, we went over that. Antimicrobials. So for the listeners, what do you mean by antimicrobials? What kind of products would that be? What would
Okay.
they be in? Because interestingly, I remember last year, the doctors or the pharmacists gave us an antimicrobial wash for the kids. So you just said that it's actually not good. I know that, but for the listeners out there who don't know that, why is it a bad thing?
Well, it's been proven they're no better than soap. I mean, soap does the same. It kills bacteria. You wash your hands, and the hot water then washes that, dead bacteria off your hands. As long as you do a thorough, good job with warm water. You look on the WHO website, and it explains all about soap and why it's just as good. Antibacterial, I think, with the pandemic and the panic around COVID, and looking for solutions. I remember my kids going into primary school and getting squirted with that stuff. As they went in every time before they ate. That was like 6 months or 8 months of them that on their hands, and I just thought, well, they're absorbing that through their skin. And I didn't know enough at that point to kind of comment. I just thought,
Yeah.
right, it's happening at the moment, we'll see. But if it were to happen again, I definitely have alternatives. So the
Yeah.
antimicrobial chemicals basically kill bacteria, and they're used in chopping boards. There's antibacterial wallpaper, flooring, carpets. It's used in so many products, and it's not necessarily on the label. It's just added as a way to improve the performance or the durability of the product. So
Yeah, I mean, what I would like to say is antibacterial washes. Like if you're in the hospital, if you're a surgeon, obviously that makes sense to use that.
absolutely.
But for people using it
Yeah,
every single day and then looking at their hands and questioning, why the hell is my hands dry? Why
yeah,
is the skin just getting ruined? And they keep using it. Clearly, that's a sign that it's not good for your skin. Just use soap, right?
exactly. And you're right. In hospital settings, it's really important because they have to maintain obviously a certain level of no
Yeah,
bacteria
definitely.
for infection. But in day-to-day use, it's just really not. It's just really not needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I know some people who shower every single day. A bit of some germs are not bad. Like you don't have to, I mean, I don't know what your view is on this, but I have some clients who shower every single day. So they're like spotless clean. And there's been research and talk about how, kids don't play in the dirt no more.
Yeah, exactly. Or washing your hair every day. And
Yeah.
getting rid of the body needs these kind of germs and needs to be able to fight those germs and bacteria. It's a bit like, the 10-second rule or 2-second rule when you pick food off the floor. It depends obviously where you are.
What's your rule then? That's a good question actually. So and
Well, we don't.
okay, so let's say you're in your office now, you dropped a sandwich on the floor. How
But
many
I don't wear.
seconds?
I don't wear outdoor shoes indoors. That's a big thing, and
Oh
I
wow,
I
good
do
point.
tend to vacuum at least once a week maybe,
Yeah.
and mop. So I know it's fairly okay. Um,
Okay, so a biscuit then. You've dropped a
yeah.
biscuit on the floor. How long do you give it?
I saw a television program, and the woman had to wait 60 seconds, and she was going, "Oh, can I do it 60 seconds?" But it turns out whether it's 5 seconds or 60 seconds, your biscuit is crawling with whatever's on the floor. It doesn't matter the time limit. They're on it, you know.
Yeah.
So the 3 second rule. Yeah, I would definitely eat something off my own floor, but I wouldn't in like an outdoor
Yeah,
situation.
of course.
In
Yeah,
a restaurant,
definitely.
in a park, of course not. I try and avoid that. So
Yeah, yeah. You need to disinfect that cookie if you drop it outside. Flame retardants. So I know we spoke about this in November. So
yeah.
if you just let people know, why should they worry about flame retardants, and where, actually, first, where can you get them from?
Well, first of all, they were introduced really because, and this is kind of again coming out, the tobacco industry wanted to really pushed in the USA, really pushed for flame retardants to be added to products rather than them, you know, taking kind of ownership that fires were being caused by cigarettes. So we've got now these flammability and fire standards, and these chemicals have been introduced to so many different products, mainly textiles. So you're looking at couches, foams within the couches, mattresses, and so on. And the idea is that they slow ignition time so that technically you have longer periods of time to exit your home. That's what they're there for, to slow the length of time before it actually becomes a fire. But they've done studies with products that have them and products that don't. And those that have them, it only takes a few 3 or 4 seconds extra that you're gaining. So it's really not that
Wow.
much of a benefit. But what's actually happening is the smoke that comes off the products with the flame retardant is far denser, it's far more toxic, and it's harder to see through. So, you know, once that's on flames, like you can't get out of the property because you are consumed by the smoke. So this is a big problem. And flame retardants are a big kind of hot issue at the moment. And my advice would be to ask. There's not enough information. This is not something you can go in and go look at a label on a product. It won't necessarily tell you whether it's on the product. You really have to be accountable yourself, and you have to ask them, the retailer, and if they don't know, you need to get them to ask the manufacturer. Not everybody wants to do that, and not everybody has a gumption to do that. So that's kind of again why I'm starting on this journey, so I can do it.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
people don't want to be that person,
oh,
to ask, and I get it from a social perspective, but I guess it depends how much passion you have for this
exactly.
situation.
Yeah, but if you see something that says it doesn't have it, or there's a more natural option which is like naturally flame resistant or flame retardant. So, for example, the insulation I use in my loft is natural wool, and that's naturally flame resistant rather than having the chemicals in rock wool.
We talk about flame retardants, and I think you mentioned last time we spoke, it's actually better to either get, and you mentioned it earlier actually, it's actually better to get secondhand furniture because it's been aired out. But let's say if someone did buy like a mattress and it's got flame retardants on there, the best thing to do would be to air it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything new that you buy that has that kind of new smell, if you can afford to like leave it in a separate room for at least a week, just because usually when you have a product delivered, it's like a large piece of furniture, it comes wrapped, doesn't it? It comes wrapped in plastic. And so the biggest hit you will get from those off-gassing chemicals will be within the first few days because they've all been contained. So they've been slowly off-gassing inside that. You know, when you rip off the plastic and just the smell hits you. So that's ideally, yeah, you know, put it into a separate room, open the windows, get the ventilation going. I did that with my children's wardrobe actually. I couldn't find one that was kind of the right size for the alcove I needed, and then I eventually found one online, flat packed. So I did that, but they weren't there for a week, so I was able to air it out. But it's you make those decisions, and I've got other vintage wardrobes in other rooms, so you know
Yeah,
you've got to live as well.
yeah,
So this is not a hard
exactly.
fast rule. I like don't ever buy flat packed. I have flat packed,
We
but
all
no,
do, we all do.
we all do exactly. So it's just being conscious and aware and trying to take the best route that you can.
Definitely, definitely. Formaldehyde. So I know, if for those that don't know, you'll need to do your own research. Formaldehyde is used in some medicines, so that's something for people need to look into. But where else would you get
Well,
formaldehyde?
it's in mattresses, so we're
Okay.
sleeping on it. It's in clothing. It's so that's why organic cotton is better to be bought rather than standard fashion brand cotton because it tends to have formaldehyde in it. It's also used back to flat packs, so pressed wood. It's used as part of the adhesive, And that's what you can smell when you bring the fat packed products home, is the formaldehyde. That's what's off.
Interesting.
And it's carcinogenic. It's a known fact. It's a cancer proving chemical, so, but there are companies, I'm just trying to remember what IKEA have done. I think they've done formaldehyde free, but I can't be
Oh,
quoted on that.
wow. Okay, interesting.
I can't be quoted on that, but I remember
Okay.
seeing something, but I'd rather not be quoted on that because I need to
Yeah.
check it. But I know the bigger companies like that are looking at more sustainable options and healthier options. So I will need to look into that. But yeah, again, it's just being mindful. And that's why going to a secondhand charity shop with furniture is been out there for 6 months to a year, and it's off gas. So most off gassing will reduce over time, but there's some chemicals that will just keep off gassing for years, like phthalates in the flooring and vinyl flooring.
Mm-hmm.
So they will mean continually off gas for years. And that's why it's not good to have vinyl flooring for children, because they're really close to the floor. So
Of course. And especially when they're little kids and they're crawling and everything, they're dribbling, they're putting their hands back in their mouth.
yeah, so all that dirt, we say the dirt is good for them, but actually a lot of the dust in our homes is contaminated with the chemicals.
Heavy metals.
The heavy metal, yeah, from everything. So keeping your house clean is actually a benefit.
Definitely. Phthalates, I know a lot of people on TikTok and all these other social media places, they talk about phthalates a lot. So phthalates is obviously another chemical. And would people get those chemicals from then?
So they are used in plastics to make them flexible. So anything that's like a flexible plastic, like a shower curtain, vinyl flooring, the covering around wires.
Wow.
There's like so many different products that you can, but just anything that's like, flexible plastic. So there's a lot of phthalate free flooring. Try and say
Wow.
that. So that's actually out there, but you just have to make sure you ask your flooring guy, can I have the phthalate free option? But the issue with PVC, which is what vinyl flooring is it's created with the use of chlorine. And so there's other chemicals there that are an issue. So really just avoid vinyl flooring. And also it doesn't biodegrade. It's not sustainable. It's a product that will last for hundreds of years. But phthalates are in lots of flexible products.
And that's another thing. Obviously, we're in an era where recycling is a big thing. Like these, like for example, mattresses. Can you recycle them?
There are companies that do break them down and take the parts apart.
Okay, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah, there's one in Essex actually. I can't remember the name. I remember I saw a friend post it, which was interesting. But I do believe there are kind of organisations around, but you just have to kind of look for them.
Okay.
I guess they must break them down and take the bits they can use, and they'll probably landfill the rest, because not all parts of a mattress. Depends on how it's made as well.
Yeah, I remember I went to a factory that collects all charity clothes, and I was like, mate, it was massive. And then I was like, oh, what's that? It looks like this looks like pieces of sofa. And they're like, oh, he was like, oh, companies pay for that stuff. So as a filler. I think I can't remember what it was for, but it made sense. It was like some sort of furniture, and they just use all these recycling bits, cut them into little bits and just fill them up so they're just used again.
Well, that's what we need to be thinking about. Is like also like the kind of cradle to cradle. So we're rather than cradle to grave, we're just sticking stuff in landfill. We're trying to recycle it. It's like, how can we reuse a product? So another big thing that I learned, which is about adhesives and pulps, which are used regularly by the construction and building industry. We slap something on, we stick it up. We slap something on the floor, we stick it down. But actually, these sealants can contain, not all of them do, but can contain toxic chemicals as well. So if we can do mechanical fixing for things as much as possible, then we can take it down especially when you know you to move into a new house and the kitchen has basically been stuck to the wall and it just gets ripped out and chucked into a skip. Yeah. If it was mechanically attached and we could be broken down and resold, because there's like secondhand kitchen sites, then we're helping that sustainable idea of reusing furniture and products.
Definitely. So this is a bonus round. You have to
I didn't get excited.
you have about a second to answer, and so it's the first answer you give that qualifies. Okay, I do this with everyone. I'm not just picking on you. So
okay.
Right. Okay. So what was your first job?
Ever?
Yeah.
working as a delicatessen assistant.
What three things can you not live without?
uh, Tricky. Water, mascara, and a good book.
Okay, interesting. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, be braver and go with your gut. Because my gut's been right in the past and I've just ignored it.
What is your favorite house plant?
Hmm. Ivy, because it trails down. I like that.
Well, what is something quirky about you, I guess? I guess that's the
Oh,
question.
okay, great. Well, okay, I'm deaf on my right hand side, and most people don't know that. But I wasn't deaf from birth. It happened due to an operation several years ago, so I had to adapt.
Oh,
Yeah, adapt to walking again in a straight line, actually. So
wow.
just a bit weird because your hearing is very much related to your balance.
That's right. That's right. So, what was that process like? How long did that take you to get back
Well,
to?
I'm still recovering from quite a big operation, but it took about 6 months to fully. I actually used the buggy, which was great because I could use a buggy to steer me myself. But when the light goes down, it took years. And when the light went down, I felt like I was drunk, even though I wasn't. But just because
Wow.
for the lack of light and the lack of ear balance, I couldn't walk on the pavement straight. I would be like
Wow.
swerving.
And
So
makes should make people think how important the sun is.
yeah, lights and yeah. So there
Mm,
we go.
interesting. Interesting. Your most gifted book.
Gifted book, as in the
Well,
one I would give.
I guess the one that you think the most of or love the most.
Oh gosh, there's so many, but I think the most recent one, which I did just put on in my Instagram, was Matrix by Lauren Groff,
What's
which
that
is
about?
so it's a fabulous tale about this woman who is kind of forced into a life of a monastery, but she becomes the kind of the abbess, which is so she looks after. It sounds like it sounds very dull, but it's actually incredible writing. And it's one of those books where at the end of it, I just didn't want it to stop. I wanted to know more about her life
Wow.
and the life of the abbesses. So it's fabulous.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And your favorite place to visit?
Ooh, probably a small town in Florence, Italy, called Lucca.
Luca.
A beautiful walled town, absolutely a gem. It's just gorgeous, and it's
Brilliant.
not far. It's about an hour from the beach as well. So
Oh, nice.
best of both worlds.
Everyone loves a beach, don't they?
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. What do you think of like salt lamps?
Salt lamps, I know that they absorb moisture from the air and they absorb like positive ions and deflect negative, and we need negative ions. So they come from like, if you ever felt stood next to the sea or waterfall, they create negative ions in the air, and that's why you get that real big blast of feeling better, feeling like fresh air. So salt lamps are good to have because they produce negative ions, as do beeswax candles.
Okay. Oh,
So
that's
they're
really
good.
interesting.
Yeah, and the negative ions in the air will like attach the positive, and the positive usually comes from like the VOCs and then the bad chemicals, and they attach. And once they get too heavy, they fall
Yeah.
down and become dust, and that's why you need to clear your dust away. Dust is a mixture of particles from outside that you bring in, literally dirt, soil, um, pollen, the chemicals from outdoors. Then we've got chemicals indoors that will fall, like I say, like heavy, and they become sort of, if as you're walking up a stair carpet, there's abrasion every time you walk.
That's
So
right, yeah.
tiny, tiny, tiny molecules are falling off that and creating dust. And obviously, like you were just talking about earlier, the baby's on the floor and it's dribbling and it licks its fingers, it's picking up wherever's
And like
going.
this, I guess like shaking off the clothes and just running and moving. Because like when you see like a ray of light coming through a window, you can actually see it in the air.
Some rooms are worse than others because yeah, obviously depending on how you live and what our skin cells and stuff are shedding and our hair, and so it's all adding to that. So keeping a clean home but with natural cleaning products is a healthy home.
Okay, interesting. And while we're on that topic, and I don't know if you know the answer, I'm just curious now. This is my curiosity kicking in. How come when a house is completely empty and you've people would cover it with sheets, there's still dust forming when nothing is going on in the house?
So things will still be off gassing depending on what they are.
Ah,
The sheets
okay.
themselves might have chemicals in them and they're off gassing.
Yeah.
The dust comes, like I say, from the atmosphere outside as well. And also the bricks and the paint and just everything. Nothing is absolutely inert. Well, there are things that are inert, but what I mean is there's always going to be something coming off something.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Cool, cool. Well, as you said, being 100% toxic free is impossible, but the best thing we can do is, do our best and maybe take it one step at a time. I think that's the main message here.
Definitely take it one step at a time. You can go on my website. I've got advice, like free advice, the top 5 tips on, how to kind of start your healthier home journey. It's looking at like cleaning products, synthetic fragrances, moving away from them, moving away from wall-to-wall carpeting and things like that. So there's top tips on my website, and I'm also going to be posting videos on my TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and stuff. So yeah, it's a personal journey. And it's what you're passionate about. I'm also passionate about food, like, well, apart from eating it, I'm also about it being organic. So I've really increased, although it's a hefty cost, I'd rather spend the money on that because I know just how much of a benefit it is to me and my children.
Yeah, and even basic economics, the more people buying the stuff, it'll make it cheaper. But because we're not buying enough of it, it's going to stay at a expensive price. But yeah, that's really good. That's really good. So what are your 5 top tips to help someone to start their journey, would you say? And to reduce the toxic exposure and having a healthy home?
So number 1, ventilate. Absolutely ventilate your indoor areas every single day. Get the windows open, even if it's raining, just for a couple of minutes, just to recharge that space, because it's most homes are 2 to 5 times more polluted inside than they are outside. So obviously it depends where you live. If you live next to really heavy roads, like with traffic, then choose your time to open your windows, but get that outdoor air inside. That's the first thing. Second thing is really wall-to-wall carpeting is just not great because it's so many different layers and there's a lot of chemicals involved in carpet. So unless you're using something like 100% wool, which is really expensive, and it's not even guaranteed that they might not have flame retardants on them. So it's better to have flooring, natural flooring like linoleum or cork, or if you've got floorboards, like seal them with an oil. That's the second thing. Third thing, remove all synthetic scents. So just get rid of those plugins because they are damaging. And also, do you know the thyroid issues with cats and dogs has increased?
Oh, is it? Oh, that's sugar. I've got a cat sitting right here. But to be fair, we don't use any sprays or anything like that anyway.
That's great. But I've spoke to a lady and she said she knew someone whose cat was actually dying basically, and then they discovered the plug-in was right next to the cat's basket, so they removed it, and within a few weeks she was much better.
Wow.
So I mean that's I genuinely believe that, and I was just like, I've sat in hairdresser and I've been sat next and I thought, oh, it's clawing my throat. So get rid of synthetic scents. The fourth thing is clean with natural products. So you can either go plant-based, and if you can bear the smell of vinegar, but it will disappear after 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, but my wife can't do white vinegar, so
well, it took me a while to get used to, but I am used to it now. I must admit, I couldn't do it to begin with, but I have got used to it. But it's white vinegar, lemon juice, but you can add essential oils, to mask the smell, or it will certainly they will linger. Bicarbonate soda, citric acid, and then the fifth thing is really more to do with mold. If you've got mold in your house, make sure you tackle it. Don't just cover it with paint.
Because bleach, putting bleach on mold is the worst thing people can do. And if you could explain why it's really bad and what people can do, that would be fantastic.
Oh, well, I don't know that much, but I do know that bleach, you're right, bleach affects the mold, and rather than inhibiting growth, it actually encourages growth. It promotes it. So I know that. So yeah, bleach anyway is so bad for aquatic life. It's bad for the seas. We should just ditch bleach and not use it at all. So mold, start with finding out where the water ingress is coming in. That's you've got to get to
the root cause, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I had some mold in my living room on my bay window, and I thought at first it was because the heavy curtains were just keeping the condensation in, between the wall and the curtain. But it turned out I had leaky windowsills outside, and they were gradually allowing the water into the inside of the building and into so it's just finding the source and solving the source, and then you can wash it away. Now I don't know how to wash away mold. I just did it with water.
It'll be in the next podcast with me, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the next I'm going to look into. But yeah, get rid of your mold and then paint. Don't paint over mold.
I also want to ask before we finish up, because I'm sorry, I know we were 10 minutes over, so sorry.
Okay.
I want to ask, what kind of documentaries would you recommend? Because last time we spoke, I spoke about how I watched a movie called Dark Waters with, I think it's Marcus Ruffalo, I think that's his name, the guy who's
Yeah,
Incredible Hulk. And
brilliant.
it's one of my favorite movies because it talks about Teflon, for one.
Yeah.
Then it literally, for like 2 seconds, it touches on fluoride for like 2 seconds, but it kind of like, just gives you the reason why fluoride is bad literally within a few seconds. So, what kind of movies or documentaries do you have in mind, if you have any? Just curious.
And off the top of my mind, there was a series. I was just going to Google it to see if I can remember the name. There was a series of, I think it was on Netflix. This isn't, you don't want to post this bit because I can't actually remember. But it was a series and it was looking at all various different types of foods. And it started with avocados. I don't know if you saw it. And it was
Oh,
all the
interesting.
avocado industry and how it's so reliant on water and how these,
And the bees.
oh, it was just so fascinating. But that series, I will find out what it was. And
Text it to me. Text it to me, and
I
I'll put it
will.
up.
I will. I was going to say Dark Waters because that is probably one of my favorite. Like, it's quite harrowing, but it's so fascinating, and it's also really frustrating because you think these large, companies know exactly what they're doing. They know these products are toxic. They know that they're affecting the water systems and people's health. Yet it's all about the bottom line. So that is definitely one to watch.
Okay, cool, cool. And to finish up, what does health mean to you?
Again, it's a personal journey, but for me, it's trying to be healthy, but mind and body for as long as I can. I think now that I'm kind of getting older as well, and I see my children growing up, I want to see my children grow up as long as I can. I just want to be as healthy, um, yeah, and provide them with the best start in life as well. That's what health is for me.
Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. And where can everyone find you? Where can our listeners find you?
Okay, so I've got my website. You can contact me through there. It's beautifulhealthyhome.co.uk. I'm also on Instagram, so it's beautiful_healthy_home. I'm also on Facebook, and I've just started doing TikTok videos, so I'll be on there too. So yeah, if
Brilliant.
anyone's interested, yeah, just give me a buzz. I'm happy to have a free chat to begin with.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's it. And that's it. We're done.
Brilliant, great.
How's your course? So what courses were you doing then?
So I did healthy materials. It's the only course of its kind in the world at the moment. And it's I stumbled across it in June, I think, and I thought, right, I just need to do this now because it's kind of verified all my own research.
Oh, brilliant.
I didn't have any, I did so much research myself.
Yeah.
But this course has just kind of, really helped verify it. So it's called Healthy Materials. It's by an institute called the Healthy Materials Lab, which
Interesting. Do you know what? I'll put this part in as well because I think it'd be interesting for people to know that
oh,
you're doing this course.
yeah, definitely. Because I think what I found within the design industry, the same with fashion as well, it's quite a closed world. People don't like to share information. They don't, they're scared about the competition. That's not me. With interior design, I am open and I want to encourage all designers to do this course because it will really help them make much more healthier kind of decisions in the future when they're buying products. So there's that course. It's through the Parsons School of Design in New York. So did that online. And then I've just completed, although I've got my final exam next week, with
Wow. Good luck.
another course on, thank you, on healthy buildings. So it's looking at building biology, so the construction of buildings and like the materials that are used. So
Building biology. That sounds so interesting.
it's fascinating. It's like a kind of movement that was started in the 80s by, I can't remember his name now. I think it was a German guy, and it's kind of taken off in Australia. And so the Europe and Australia are really hot on building biology. And it's all about the well-being of construction from the start, from the minute you start drawing it. Like, what materials are you going to use, and how are the occupants inside going to live? You know. So that's been a fascinating course as well, because I do want to get involved in loft conversions and kitchen extensions as well, and just understand it from the ground up. So yeah, I've been busy studying, but I've finished now. Finally, I've had a
Yeah.
summer of study, so I'm looking forward to actually focusing on work now.
That's amazing. I mean, um, I'm sure all these kind of courses make it fun because you're interested in it, isn't it? Because you're
Yeah,
interested, it makes
yeah.
it a bit easier. It's gonna be
Oh,
tough, but
definitely. Because I mean, like all of us, I guess we all continually study. and learn and research, but it's good to actually have a kind of bona fide organization say, no, you're right, this is right, or you didn't get that right, so this is the right information. So yeah, it's fascinating. A year ago I was like, oh my god, where am I going with this, how am I going to do it? It's a journey, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
when you do this and you look back and think, yes, finally. It's personal growth, isn't it? We have to keep doing this. It's
Yeah.
not a job for life anymore. It's like personal growth and learning new stuff, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's all part of the journey.
Definitely, definitely. But thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to upload it. And I'll be tagging you and stuff. Don't worry.
It was a really, really interesting discussion. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You take care of yourself. Yeah.
You take care, Omar.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.